The wind moves like a forgotten memory across the polar wastes, brushing its cold fingers over a land older than language, older than time itself. Beneath its drifting silence lies a world untouched by human breath, an expanse of white horizons where the sky feels heavier, deeper, almost aware. Out here, the earth keeps its secrets buried beneath layers of ancient frost. But scattered across this frozen emptiness are fragments of the universe itself black. Stones that once blazed through the heavens, fell with the roar of cosmic fire, and came to rest in a land that knows only stillness. These fallen meteors, half sunk beneath centuries of ice, are more than relics. They are messages, reminders, evidence that even in the loneliest corners of the world, the universe is always speaking, if we are willing to listen. And so we journey north, toward the unseen polar frontiers, toward forgotten impact fields stretching farther than the eye can reach, toward the buried scars of an ancient sky. If this voyage into the frozen cosmic wilderness speaks to you, if you're drawn to the hidden, the quiet, the untouched, then now is the moment to like, share, and subscribe so more stories like this can find their way into the light. The journey begins long before the ice appears. It begins in the low hum of the aircraft as it cuts through a sky the color of pale steel. Through the window, the world below shifts from shades of green to muted browns, then into a stark emptiness that swallows everything familiar. The engines seem to grow quieter as the horizon turns white, as though even the machine understands it is entering a place where silence reigns. And then, there it is, the first glimpse of the polar frontier. A vast, endless sheet of frozen earth, stretching so far the distance becomes meaningless, time becomes shapeless, and sound itself feels like an intruder. When we land, the cold does not arrive like a sensation, but like a presence. It wraps around the body slowly, methodically, pressing through layers of fabric and breath, reminding you that this land belongs to no one and never has. The wind moves in long, steady waves, brushing across the ice as if smoothing the wrinkles of an ancient world. Each gust carries a faint whisper, a sound so soft it feels imagined yet unmistakably real. This is not merely weather. It is a voice shaped by centuries of storms, carrying fragments of stories carved into the frozen layers beneath our feet. As we step farther from the aircraft, the scale of the land begins to reveal itself. The sky feels wider here, stretched thin like a canvas waiting for the brushstroke of a distant star. The ground, fractured in places like broken glass, gleams with a faint blue glow beneath the snowlight trapped inside the ice for centuries, now spilling out in quiet sighs. This frontier is not empty. It is full of memory. The air tastes sharp, metallic, as if charged with the residue of a forgotten impact. Somewhere beneath this frost lie the remnants of stones that fell from the heavens, stones that carried fire across the sky before surrendering to the cold. The first meteor fragment appears almost by accident. It rests half-buried near a ridge of wind-carved snow, a small, dark blemish against the otherwise perfect white. At first glance, it looks like nothing more than a charred stone. But as the light shifts, its surface reveals textures that do not belong to this world, grooves melted into impossible patterns, metallic veins shimmering faintly beneath the frost. Touching it feels like touching something asleep, something holding its breath. It is colder than the surrounding ice, as though preserving its own secret within its core. Standing here, in this quiet expanse where even the sun seems hesitant, you begin to sense the weight of the land beneath you. The ice is not merely frozen water. It is a timeline, a layered archive. Every winter sealed another page. Every storm etched a new memory. Every century folded into the next. And somewhere deep within those layers lie fragments of the sky that fell long before any human eye witnessed them. As we continue forward, the frontier begins to shift from a blank canvas to a labyrinth of subtle shapes. Snow ridges rise like the backs of sleeping giants. Ice floes stretch toward the horizon in fractured mosaics. Shadows carve slow-moving lines across the surface as the low sun drifts along its shallow arc. Everything moves, yet nothing moves quickly. Time here feels different, slower, more deliberate. The world breathes in long, measured rhythms, as though preserving its strength for another 1,000 years of silence. And then, without warning, the wind changes. It becomes sharper, carrying with it a deep, distant hum, almost like the echo of something buried. The ground beneath our boots vibrates faintly, a trembling so subtle it could be mistaken for imagination. But it is real. The ice is speaking, shifting, settling, whispering the same story it has whispered for centuries. This place does not simply hold fallen meteors. It welcomes them, calls to them, cradles them in its frozen hands. And as we move deeper into the silent frontier, the question grows heavier with each step. What else lies hidden beneath this endless white? The deeper we move into the frozen expanse, the more the world begins to feel like a living presence, watching, listening, waiting. The wind softens until it becomes little more than a distant murmur, a quiet breath that seems to rise from the ice itself. With every step, the crunch beneath our boots echoes far louder than it should, as though the ground were amplifying each sound, reminding us how small we are compared to the age of this land. Here, silence is not the absence of noise. It is its own kind of language, one that speaks in slow vibrations and shifting shadows. The landscape begins to change in subtle ways. The once flat surface now dips into long, shallow valleys carved over centuries by the slow crawl of the ice. Sunlight bends through suspended snow crystals, scattering colors that shimmer briefly before vanishing into the pale blue glow. Each valley feels like a threshold, a gateway into a deeper layer of the polar world. And with every descent, the cold becomes heavier, pressing into the lungs like a weight, urging us to move slowly, to tread with care. Ahead, something glints faintly in the snow, a shard of darkness breaking through the white. At first, it looks like the same meteor fragment we encountered earlier, but as we draw closer, the differences become clear. This piece is larger, almost the size of a clenched fist, and its surface is far more intricate. Deep grooves spiral around it like frozen ripples of motion, as though the stone cooled while still twisting through the last seconds of its fiery descent. These are not random marks. They feel intentional, imprinted by the violence of entry, or perhaps by something older and stranger. Lifting, it reveals a surprising weight. The stone is denser than it appears, as if it carries not just mass, but memory. It chills the glove instantly, radiating a cold that seems too pure, too absolute, even for this place. For a moment, standing in the middle of this frozen world with a piece of fallen sky in hand, it becomes impossible not to wonder how many centuries it has lain here, untouched, waiting for a story to unfold around it. We place the stone back carefully, almost respectfully, and continue forward. The frontier stretches endlessly, but now there is a sense of direction beneath the surface, a subtle pull that guides us deeper into the heart of this frozen realm. The ice begins to shift in color-faint streaks of blue, giving way to deeper, richer shades, almost like veins running beneath translucent skin. These patterns stretch for kilometers, tracing ancient paths sculpted by pressure, wind, and time. Soon we reach the edge of a wide depression, a shallow basin carved by a long-forgotten impact. It is not deep, but its shape is unmistakably circular, its edges smoothed by centuries of storms. Standing at its center feels like stepping into the echo of a moment that once burned brighter than the sun. The air here is unnaturally still, heavy with the residue of a memory preserved in frost. Even the light seems different, muted, almost reverent. This basin is not just a mark on the ice. It is a scar left by a cosmic collision, a point where the sky once shattered the silence of the frontier. And judging by its size, The meteor that created it must have erupted in a blaze that lit the entire horizon. But the real mystery is not the crater itself. It is what lies beneath it. The ice here is layered, compacted, marked by unusual streaks that radiate outward like frozen waves. Something beneath the surface altered its structure, changed the way it froze, shaped the way it cracked. As we examine the patterns, another realization begins to form. This crater is not alone. In the far distance, faint shadows ripple across the landscape, hints of other depressions, other scars, forming a chain that stretches farther than the eye can see, each one aligned with the next, each one pointing deeper into the frontier. This was no chaotic scattering of fallen stones. This was a path, a sequence, a trail carved by cosmic fire. The wind returns with a low, rising hum, as if reacting to our discovery. Snow lifts from the ground and dances in spirals, swirling around the basin like the ghosts of ancient storms. The air vibrates gently, almost like a quiet warning. Something drew these meteors here. Something guided their fall. And with each step deeper into this silent frontier, the weight of that truth presses harder against the heart. The sky shifts as we move farther across the ice, darkening into a muted slate blue that seems to absorb sound rather than reflect it. The sun hangs low, barely grazing the horizon, casting long, stretched shadows that trail behind us like silent companions. In this light, the landscape takes on an otherworldly glow, soft, diffused, almost dreamlike. Every detail becomes sharper, yet strangely distant, as if viewed through a thin veil of time. We leave the crater behind, but its presence lingers, a quiet reminder carved into the layers of memory beneath our feet. The chain of depressions grows clearer now, each one forming a distinct mark against the endless white. They stretch toward a rise in the far distance, a gentle slope that looks almost unnatural in a land defined by flatness. The alignment is too perfect to ignore. Each impact site seems to point toward the same distant ridge, as though the sky itself once drew a line across the ice. With each step, the wind grows colder, its breath sliding beneath the layers of insulated fabric. The air carries a faint metallic scent, not sharp like blood or iron, but softer, more ancient, like the preserved atmosphere trapped inside stones that fell before our ancestors learned to walk upright. It feels as though the frontier is exhaling slowly, revealing fragments of its ancient stories with every gust. The slope rises gradually until it forms a long, low crest overlooking a valley carved by centuries of shifting ice. From above, the valley appears impossibly still, a smooth white canvas interrupted only by faint cracks that run like hairline fractures across glass. But what catches the eye is not the valley itself. It is the dark shapes scattered across its surface, barely visible beneath drifting snow. More meteor fragments. Dozens of them. Some small, some the size of helmets, others nearly the shape of boulders, their blackened forms protruding like the remnants of a forgotten battle. They are scattered yet orderly, spread across the valley in a pattern too structured to be random. From this height, the arrangement resembles the remnants of a celestial map, points connected by invisible lines that stretch across the ice, forming constellations long erased from the sky above. The sight is both beautiful and unsettling. These stones fell centuries apart, yet somehow landed in perfect harmony with one another. It makes the mind whisper questions the heart is not ready to answer. Were these fragments guided by some cosmic force? Or is this simply the universe reminding us how little we understand of its design? We descend into the valley, approaching the first cluster of stones. Up close, their details sharpen. The surfaces are etched with strange, swirling textures, like fingerprints left behind by fire. Thin cracks run across them, but instead of weakening the stones, they appear to strengthen them, each fracture forming geometric intersections that almost resemble inscriptions. The ice around them is different too, thicker and clearer, as though the stones altered the way it froze upon contact. When sunlight hits these patches, the ice glows with a faint inner radiance, the color of frozen starlight. Running a gloved hand over one of the larger fragments sends a chill deeper than the cold through the body. A sensation not of temperature, but of distance, as if touching this stone bridges a gap between two worlds separated by unimaginable voids. The stone feels ancient, older than the ice, older than the land beneath it, older perhaps than the planet that now shelters it. As we continue across the valley, the pattern becomes unmistakable. The fragments form a trail leading toward the far end of the basin, where the ice rises again into a narrow passage. The entrance looks carved rather than naturally formed, its walls smoothed by persistent winds, or perhaps by something else, something that once moved heat through this place with unimaginable force. Standing at the threshold of the passage, the world behind us feels suddenly distant, like a fading dream. The air grows still, heavy, dense with an unspoken significance. The valley of fragments lies silent, yet its silence feels charged, expectant. Something waits beyond this passage. Something buried deeper within the frontier, where even the wind hesitates to wander. We take a breath. The frost clings to the air like powdered stars. Then we step forward into the narrowing corridor of ice, leaving the open world behind as the ancient frontier closes gently around us. The passage narrows as we move deeper within it, the walls rising on both sides like frozen cliffs sculpted into smooth, towering surfaces. Light filters through the ice overhead in long, wavering ribbons that dance as the wind pushes faint currents of snow across the opening far behind us. Inside this corridor, sound behaves strangely. Footsteps echo with a hollow, distant tone, as though the ice itself is listening and repeating each movement with careful deliberation. Even the faint hiss of breath feels amplified, suspended in the frigid air like a fragile note waiting to be shattered. The walls shift in color as we advance. Pale blue deepens into cobalt, streaked with darker lines that twist through the ice like veins. These lines pulse faintly when the light hits them just right, as though capturing and releasing the forgotten glow of ancient storms. Running a hand along the surface reveals layers compacted through centuries of pressure, each one representing a winter that came and went long before our time. Every inch of this passage is a record of frozen archive, preserving the rise and fall of seasons across countless ages. But then the walls begin to change again. The deeper we go, the more the ice reveals shapes beneath its surface. At first they appear as faint smudges, barely noticeable, but soon they sharpen strange silhouettes frozen inside the translucent layers. Dark fragments, angular forms, pieces of something that once fell from the sky. These are meteor shards, much smaller than the ones scattered across the valley, yet unmistakable in their structure. Some are no larger than a fingernail. Others reach the size of broken branches. They are embedded deep within the ice, suspended at different heights, as though caught mid-fall in a world where time suddenly chose to hold its breath. Each one glimmers faintly as we pass, reflecting a ghostly light that feels almost watchful. It becomes clear that this corridor was formed not just by natural forces, but by the heat and energy unleashed during centuries of impacts. The meteors carve through the ice in slow, grinding descents, leaving trails that later froze solid. This passage is not a simple tunnel. It is a scar one shaped by cosmic fire and preserved by the cold. Far ahead, the corridor widens into a large chamber. The ceiling opens into an oval dome of ice, its surface illuminated by the low sun filtering in through a fractured skylight. The light scatters across the floor in silver patterns, reflecting off surfaces that shimmer like polished glass. Stepping inside feels like entering a forgotten cathedral, one built not by human hands, but by the persistent artistry of time and frozen pressure. At the chamber's center lies a massive stone, half buried in the ice. It is larger than anything encountered so far, nearly the size of a small vehicle, its surface warped and twisted from the violence of its descent. But it is the markings on the stone that capture attention. They curve in spirals and intersecting lines, creating patterns that seem too precise, too intentional to be the result of chance. Even beneath frost and centuries of wear, the grooves retain a sense of design, a geometry that defies the chaotic nature of impact. Circling the stone, we notice something else. The ice around it is perfectly clear, forming a sphere of crystallized transparency that feels almost shield-like. Light refracts through it in a slow dance, bending around the stone as though the ice were protecting it, preserving it, waiting for someone to find it. The chamber is silent, yet the silence feels focused, as if the air is holding a long, patient breath. Reaching out, we touch the ice. A pulse travels through it, not a sound, not a vibration, but a sensation like a faint memory rising from somewhere deep within the earth. It fades as quickly as it arrives, leaving behind a trace of warmth in a world otherwise defined by relentless cold. Standing before this colossal fragment, a realization settles in like falling snow. This was not the first meteor to strike here, and it will not be the last. The patterns across the valley, the alignment of craters, the frozen trails within this corridor, all point to a single truth. Something has drawn these stones to the frontier over centuries. Some force, some gravitational anomaly, or perhaps something far less understood, has guided them here with impossible precision. The chamber feels like the heart of the frontier, a place where the sky and the ice meet in quiet conversation. And yet the question looms larger than ever. Why here? Why this land of endless winter? What truth rests beneath this ice, waiting to reveal itself? The light in the chamber dims as the sun dips lower, sending long shadows sliding across the frozen walls. The stone at the center seems to darken with the fading light, its patterns retreating into mystery once more. And somewhere deep in the passage behind us, the wind begins to rise again, slow, steady, urging us to move forward into the unknown. The storm had not yet settled when the team moved deeper into the valley of blue shadows. Wind scraped across the surface of the Arctic like 1,000 ghostly hands searching for something they had long forgotten. Above, the sun hung a pale kind low, distant, barely able to cut through the curtain of drifting frost. And below, somewhere in the white expanse, gaped an entrance older than any human memory. A doorway carved by the slow, patient violence of time. The ice crackled as their boots touched down. Every step echoed like the creak of ancient bones shifting. It was here, in this silent cathedral of cold, that Chapter 2 truly began. The drone operator, Malik, launched the first recon unit into the air. Its blinking red eye rose like a lonely star swallowed by fog. On the monitor, the frozen landscape unfolded ridges, fissures, ice waves stacked like frozen tsunamis. But then the camera caught something else. A hole, circular, perfectly rimmed with hoarfrost. Not large, but unmistakably unnatural in shape. "Is that symmetrical?" one of the team whispered. Symmetry meant intention, and intention meant mystery. As they approached, the wind suddenly died, as if the valley itself had inhaled and was now holding its breath. The silence deepened, thickened, until even the snowflakes seemed to fall more slowly. At the edge of the opening, the ice glowed with an inner faint blue pulse, like something living, like something waiting. Dr. Helena Graves knelt beside it, brushing away crystalline dust with her gloved fingers. A rush of cold air breathed out from the darkness below, colder than the Arctic wind above, colder than anything natural should be. It was the kind of cold that carried stories, stories buried too deep for sunlight to reach. "This isn't a typical melt chamber," she said, her voice steady but tinged with a tremor she tried to hide. This is a hollow formed by collapse, and the shape, the smoothness. Something accelerated the process. Malik frowned. "What do you mean, something?" Dr. Graves didn't answer. Instead, she leaned in, letting the dim blue glow reflect in her eyes. She had dedicated her life to studying ancient ice formations. And nothing she knew, nothing in the textbooks, the research, or the myths explained this. A faint hum rose from the depths. Subtle at first, barely distinguishable from the ringing silence. Then it grew resonant, almost melodic, like the distant vibrato of a whale song refracted through miles of ice. "What is that sound?" someone asked. No one answered, because no one knew. The rope was anchored, carabiners checked, and harnesses secured. One by one, they descended into the abyss. The light from above dimmed until it became no more than a ghostly halo far overhead. The ice walls around them glittered like celestial mosaics, colors shifting with every movement: turquoise, sapphire, deep cerulean. It felt like drifting through a frozen galaxy suspended in time. At the bottom, the chamber opened into a vast cavern. The air was impossibly still. Their breaths fogged the darkness. The hum grew louder, rhythmic now, pulsing through the ice like a heartbeat. Cameras rolled automatically. No one wanted to risk missing what they were about to witness. The cavern stretched so far that their headlamps vanished into infinity. The ground beneath their boots wasn't smooth ice. It was layered, terraced, carved by flows that didn't match any known geological pattern. "This formation," Dr. Graves whispered, kneeling to examine the ground. "It's like the ice grew outward from a single point, not inward like it usually does." Malik scanned the walls. "So what caused it?" Silence. Then a crack thundered overhead. Everyone froze. Another crack. A cascade of icy dust rained down. The cavern groaned, like something ancient shifting in its sleep. "Lights off," Dr. Graves ordered suddenly, her voice sharp. "What? Why?" "Just do it." The headlamp snapped off. Darkness swallowed them whole. For a moment, there was nothing. No sight. No movement. Only the low, resonant hum emanating from the deep. And then, a glow began to emerge from the far end of the cavern. Soft, pulsing, rhythmic. Not blue like the ice around them, but white, pure white, like starlight caught beneath the surface of the world. The glow spread slowly, illuminating the jagged formations around it. It shimmered through layers of crystalline frost, turning the cavern into a cathedral of refracted light. The hum synchronized with its pulse, rising and falling like breath. Malik whispered, "That can't be natural." The glow rippled like something responding, something aware. Dr. Graves exhaled, the breath shaky. "We're not just standing in a cavern. We're standing inside a formation that's reacting to us." As if in agreement, the glow intensified, bright, then dim, then bright again, almost like it was communicating. The team stood motionless, hypnotized by the strange luminescence. Their cameras captured everything, but no lens could translate the feeling. Awe sharpened into fear, fear softened by wonder. "What do we do?" someone finally asked. Dr. Graves stepped forward. Every instinct in her screamed to keep a safe distance. But curiosity, raw, unyielding, pulled her toward the light. Each step echoed through the chamber. Each echo triggered a ripple in the glowing mass ahead, like her presence disturbed some ancient equilibrium. She reached out her hand. Before she touched anything, before she even got close, the hum suddenly shifted, rising sharply, vibrating through her bones, through the cavern, through the very ice above. From that glowing heart of a frozen world, a line of pure white light shot across the cavern floor, racing like lightning trapped beneath glass. Hit the wall behind them. The chamber shook. The glow vanished. The hum stopped. Darkness returned. And the only sound left was the echo of their breathing. Whatever lived inside this ice had awakened, if only for a moment. And it had seen. The darkness lingered, a sudden pulse of light, settling over the cavern like a heavy, suffocating blanket. Every shadow felt alive, stretching and twisting against the walls, as though the ice itself had gained consciousness. The team huddled together, their breaths loud in the oppressive silence, each inhale a reminder that they were intruders in a place that had slept for centuries. The faint glow from their remaining headlamps painted fractured reflections across the jagged walls, making every crack seem like a doorway to something deeper, something unseen. Dr. Graves forced herself to steady her heartbeat. The pulse, the hum, the sudden flash, it wasn't random. The ice responded to them. But why? How? Her mind raced through every known theory, every textbook and field study she had ever pored over, and still, nothing matched what they were witnessing. The laws of geology and physics, the principles of crystallography, even the subtle thermodynamics of glacial pressure, none of it explained a living response. This place was more than frozen rock and water. It was a repository of something alien, something alive in ways they could not yet understand. They pressed forward, stepping carefully over frozen terraces that shimmered under their lights. Each step echoed with a precision that made their movements seem amplified, like they were walking on the inside of a bell. The cavern expanded gradually, revealing structures that were at once organic and geometric. Pillars of ice rose like natural cathedrals, their surfaces etched with microscopic grooves and swirling patterns. Some resembled tree rings frozen in place. Others were more abstract, like the trails of molten metal cooled mid-flight. In certain spots, the ice was so clear it resembled glass, and through it, dark shapes could be seen embedded within shards of meteors, glinting faintly as if aware of the intrusion. Malik crouched near one of the translucent walls, brushing away frost with gloved fingers. "Do you see this?" he murmured. The shard within wasn't a simple rock. Its surface pulsed faintly, almost imperceptibly, with a rhythm that mirrored the earlier hum. The stone was not inert. It was in some way alive, holding on to energy that the ice had preserved, energy that had traveled through the vacuum of space and the frozen eons of this cavern to reach them. Dr. Graves leaned closer, her breath fogging the crystal wall. She traced the veins running across the shard's surface, noting the geometry. It was not random. The lines intersected and spiraled in precise patterns, as if encoding a message and intelligence far older than any human civilization. Her chest tightened. If this ice was a keeper, then these stones were not merely relics of a cosmic storm. They were chapters of a story waiting to be read. As they moved deeper, the passage narrowed again, funneling them into a tunnel that sloped downward. The temperature dropped sharply, colder even than the surface above. Each breath cut through their lungs with a crystalline bite, and their boots made soft crunches against the dense frost. The tunnel's walls were smoother now, almost polished, with faint veins of blue light running through them like the currents of an invisible river. The hum followed them, low and steady, vibrating through the ice with increasing intensity, almost as if the cavern were coaxing them forward. At the bottom of the slope, the tunnel opened into a massive chamber far larger than any they had encountered before. Its ceiling arched impossibly high, disappearing into shadows that the headlamps could not penetrate. The floor was a mosaic of frozen fragments, each shard glinting with residual heat from impacts long past. The scattered meteorites varied in size from fist-sized stones to massive boulders. Some lay half-buried, others protruded proudly, their surfaces scarred and pitted by the fire of re-entry. The chamber was both chaotic and meticulously ordered. The meteors seemed scattered yet aligned, forming a pattern that drew the eye along invisible lines connecting each fragment. Dr. Graves knelt beside one particularly large fragment. Its surface was etched with spiraling grooves and tiny channels that ran like veins of silver across black stone. She placed her gloved hand on it, and a shock ran through her, a sensation not of electricity but of resonance, as if the stone recognized her presence. Her pulse quickened. She withdrew her hand slowly, but the impression lingered, like the memory of a whisper carried through frozen air. A distant rumble echoed through the chamber, subtle at first, then growing, reverberating against the walls. Dust and frost fell from the ceiling as the ice itself seemed to react. The hum intensified, merging with the new vibrations to create a complex, almost musical tone. It was as if the chamber were alive, observing, evaluating. The very stones around them pulsed in harmony, the meteor fragments almost breathing with a life of their own. Malik's voice broke the tense silence. "Look at that," he whispered. Across the floor, a line of light appeared, tracing a path between the scattered meteorites. It was faint at first, then grew brighter, highlighting subtle alignments among the fragments. They formed a grid, a network of luminous paths that connected stone to stone, suggesting intentional placement, or perhaps guidance by forces unseen. The geometry was too perfect to be a coincidence. Dr. Graves took a careful step forward, following one of the glowing lines. The ice beneath her boots vibrated lightly, a warning or perhaps an invitation. Her heartbeat echoed through her chest, synchronized with the hum that now seemed like a living rhythm rather than a simple sound. She glanced back at the team. "This is not random," she said. "It's a map. A guide." A low wind began to stir inside the chamber, lifting loose snow in gentle spirals. It carried a faint metallic scent, like ozone mingled with the memory of fire, a reminder of the violence that had brought these stones from the heavens. The air felt charged, electrified with anticipation, as if the chamber itself were poised to reveal its secrets. And then, without warning, a shard of ice detached from the ceiling above, tumbling silently toward the ground. But instead of crashing, it stopped midair, hovering a fraction above the frozen floor. Light refracted through it, creating a prism of colors that danced across the surrounding walls. The meteorites below responded, glowing brighter, as if acknowledging the frozen sentinel above them. The team watched in stunned silence. Nothing in the known world behaved this way. Every instinct screamed danger. Every fiber of curiosity demanded further exploration. The cavern had become a living map, a gallery of cosmic fragments arranged by a force older than the ice itself. Dr. Graves exhaled slowly, her breath forming a cloud in the frigid air. "We are not just observers," she murmured. "We are participants. And whatever orchestrated this, it is aware of us." The glow of the chamber intensified, the hum rising to a crescendo. Every shard, every meteorite, every line of luminous ice pulsed in harmony, like the synchronized heartbeat of a frozen world that had waited millennia to speak. And for a moment, the entire team knew a terrifying truth. This was not merely a chamber of stones. It was a crucible of history, a place where the sky met the earth, preserved and orchestrated by forces beyond comprehension. They had crossed the threshold, and the echo beneath the ice had begun to answer. The echo of the cavern lingered as the team moved cautiously across the icy floor. Every step was amplified by the frozen walls, each crunch of snow and ice a sharp reminder of their intrusion. The glow of the meteorites pulsed softly beneath their feet, casting long, distorted shadows that seemed to stretch into infinity. It was a world suspended between two realms, one of Earth, one of the cosmos, and in that suspension, time felt irrelevant. Here, centuries were compressed into a heartbeat, and the history of the universe was etched into every fragment they touched. Dr. Graves knelt beside a particularly large fragment, its surface etched with intricate patterns that spiraled like the arms of distant galaxies. Her gloved fingers traced the grooves gently, trying to discern meaning from the frozen etchings. It was almost as if the meteorite had fallen not just from space, but from thought itself, a tangible piece of the void carrying a message too subtle to decipher with mere eyes. Yet, beneath her fingertips, she could feel the pulse, the slow, steady vibration that resonated through the ice, through the stone, and into the very marrow of her bones. Malik stepped forward, shining his headlamp across the floor. The light revealed a subtle pattern in the ice, a network of lines connecting meteorite to meteorite, shimmering faintly as if alive. It was more than alignment. It was a map, a blueprint, a cosmic signature left for someone or something to follow. The lines curved and intersected with precision, weaving a path that led deeper into the heart of the cavern. Each connection hinted at intelligence, intent, design. "We need to follow it," Dr. Graves said, her voice barely above a whisper, as if speaking too loudly might shatter the delicate balance of the chamber. "It's guiding us somewhere." The team advanced, stepping carefully along the luminous trail. With every move, the pulsing glow intensified, synchronized with the hum that had begun as a whisper and now vibrated through the cavern like a living entity. The ice walls seemed to close in subtly, the crystal pillars bending the light to create illusions of movement shapes that flickered at the edge of vision, like echoes of the meteorites' descent frozen in time. It was impossible to tell what was real and what was reflection, but the sensation of being watched was undeniable. As they descended deeper, the air grew colder, sharper, denser, almost tactile. The pulse of the chambers seemed to synchronize with their own heartbeats. Dr. Graves slowed her steps, listening to the rhythm of the hum. It was deliberate now, structured, like a code written in vibration. Each beat was a signal, a cadence that led them forward, deeper into the labyrinth of ice and stone. The cavern was alive, communicating a language older than any human memory. Then the floor shifted. A crack ran across the ice beneath Malik's boots, widening slowly, revealing a hidden crevice. From within, a pale, ethereal light spilled upward, illuminating the meteorite fragments with an intensity that made them appear almost molten. The hum rose in pitch, resonating through the ice with such force that the team felt it in their chests, in their heads, even in the tips of their fingers. The cavern was reacting, responding to their presence, acknowledging their curiosity, testing their resolve. Dr. Graves peered into the crevice, her breath fogging the air. The walls of ice inside were smooth, almost polished, with layers so clear that the fragments embedded within seemed to float, suspended in frozen time. Tiny shards reflected the pale glow, scattering light like stars trapped beneath the surface. Each meteorite seemed to vibrate in harmony with the chamber, creating a symphony of resonance that defied comprehension. This is a repository," she whispered. "A collection of celestial history, preserved by forces we cannot understand." Malik reached out toward one of the smaller fragments, but the air shimmered around it, creating a distortion that made it appear to move away from his hand. The team froze. The chamber seemed to have boundaries of awareness, responding not just to presence, but to intent. The ice pulsed, the meteorites resonated, and the hum shifted, almost impatiently, as if guiding them towards something more profound, something central to the cavern's purpose. They followed the pulsing lines, weaving through pillars of ice, descending into a secondary chamber deeper than any they had encountered. The temperature dropped further, the air turning almost viscous with cold. Every exhale formed a cloud that hung suspended, as if time itself slowed in the presence of the chamber's mysterious force. The glow of the meteorites became more intense, their alignment forming geometric shapes that defied earthly understanding. Triangles, spirals, concentric circles, patterns that suggested intentional design on a scale both intimate and vast. Dr. Graves approached the largest meteorite yet, its surface black and scarred, etched with concentric grooves that spiraled inward like the eye of a storm. She ran her fingers over it, feeling the pulse resonate, the hum echo, the chamber breathe. The vibration seemed to sync with her heartbeat, amplifying each thump in her chest. And then she noticed the fracture lines within the ice surrounding it, faint channels that led deeper, forming a funnel of frozen clarity that descended into the darkness below. The team gathered at the edge of the funnel. Below lay a deep cylindrical shaft, lined with layers of ice and studded with countless fragments glowing faintly. It was a vertical labyrinth, a descent into the very heart of the frozen frontier. The glow pulsed rhythmically, almost beckoning them to move forward, to follow the path that the ice and meteorites had laid out. The cavern had a direction, a destination. It was guiding them. Dr. Graves turned to the team. "This is it," she said. "The chamber isn't just a resting place for these meteorites. It's a conduit, and whatever lies below, it's waiting for someone to understand it." The wind, previously silent, stirred within the upper chambers, carrying a soft metallic scent and a faint vibration that resonated like the final note of a symphony. The cavern had awakened. It had tested them, observed them, and now it was inviting them deeper. Moloch swallowed hard. "Are we ready for this?" Dr. Graves did not answer immediately. Her gaze was fixed on the glowing shaft below, on the meteorites suspended in perfect, impossible alignment, on the walls of ice that seemed alive and aware. She could feel the weight of centuries pressing down, the history of countless cosmic events frozen and preserved in a single uninterrupted sequence. She exhaled, steadying herself. "We have to be. There's no turning back now." Together, they began their descent into the illuminated funnel, the ice walls enclosing them like the arms of a cathedral. The hum grew louder, a living pulse resonating through every fragment of stone, every frozen crystal, every nerve in their bodies. They were entering the unknown, moving into the heart of a mystery older than human comprehension. And as the light intensified around them, a single, undeniable truth became clear. The frozen frontier had chosen them as witnesses, explorers, and perhaps something more. The echo beneath the ice was no longer just sound. It was a presence, and it was waiting to reveal its secrets. The descent into the glowing shaft was slow, deliberate, each step measured against the trembling ice beneath their feet. The walls, once smooth and gleaming, now twisted into jagged spires that seemed to pulse with their own rhythm. Light refracted through every crystal, scattering across the cavern in prismatic fragments that danced across the team's helmets and jackets. The deeper they went, the more the hum intensified, filling every corner of the shaft and vibrating through their bones. It was no longer just a sound. It was a language, subtle but insistent, as if itself were speaking, coaxing. At the bottom, the funnel opened into an immense subchamber. The air was thick with frost and anticipation. Hundreds of meteorites floated just above the icy floor, suspended in a lattice of shimmering light. Each one emitted a faint pulse, perfectly synchronized with the surrounding hum. The pattern formed an intricate network, almost like a celestial constellation rendered in 3 dimensions. It was breathtaking, terrifying, and profoundly alive. The team moved forward, their boots silent against the glass ice, eyes tracing the geometry of stars frozen in terrestrial form. Dr. Graves approached the largest fragment, a massive stone nearly twice her height, its surface etched with grooves that formed interlocking spirals and concentric arcs. It seemed older than the rest, ancient in a way that defied calculation, carrying the weight of a cosmic history that predated the ice surrounding them. She knelt beside it, placing her hand on its surface. The pulse beneath her fingertips was stronger here, resonating through her entire body, linking her, the stone, and the chamber in a delicate web of energy. The realization struck her like a thunderbolt. These meteorites weren't merely debris. They were messengers, repositories of energy, or perhaps memory from the cosmos itself. Malik's voice cut through the stillness, low and tense. "Do you feel that? The floor. It's moving." His words barely left his lips when a tremor ran across the chamber, rippling through the ice lattice and causing the suspended meteorites to sway gently, as if acknowledging the intrusion. Dr. Graves rose slowly, her breath forming clouds in the freezing air, and scanned the chamber. The patterns of light had begun to shift. the glowing lattice reconfiguring itself into new, more complex arrangements. It was deliberate, responsive. The ice was alive in a way that transcended biology, a consciousness etched in crystal and stone. The team followed the shifting paths, moving with care through the labyrinth of suspended meteorites. Every pulse of light, every vibration beneath their boots felt purposeful, guiding them deeper into the heart of the frozen enigma. And then they noticed it. At the center of the chamber, a faint column of ice stretched upward, disappearing into the shadows above. Its surface was translucent, shimmering with a white-blue light that seemed to emanate from within. Within its crystalline core, a singular fragment floated, larger than any they had seen, its surface etched with patterns that were not random but intentional, a cosmic signature carved across eons. As they approached, the air thickened, pressing against their lungs and amplifying the hum into a resonant chord that seemed to vibrate in perfect harmony with the massive fragment. Dr. Graves extended her hand once more, and as her fingers hovered over the icy surface, a pulse of light shot through the chamber. The suspended meteorites responded instantly, their glows intensifying, aligning with the central fragment in an intricate dance of energy. The lattice reformed around her, highlighting a path that spiraled upward toward the unseen heights of the shaft. It was a visual symphony, a cosmic dance frozen yet alive, waiting to reveal its story. Then, without warning, a low, deep resonance rolled through the chamber, a sound so profound it felt like the very ice was speaking, articulating secrets older than humanity. The meteorites vibrated violently, the lattice shimmering in response, and the central fragment began to glow brighter than ever. The energy coursing through the chamber was palpable, an invisible current that tugged at their senses and intuition alike. It was as if the stones themselves were conscious, acknowledging their presence and preparing to convey something fundamental, something monumental. The team froze, awed and terrified, aware that they were on the precipice of revelation. The hum coalesced into a tone that was almost melodic, each note distinct yet interconnected, resonating through the cavern in a cadence that suggested communication. Dr. Graves realized with a jolt that they were witnessing a language not of words, but of energy, pattern, and resonance. The meteorites were speaking through the medium of ice, and the ice amplified their voices across the centuries. Suddenly, a fissure split the floor near the central fragment, releasing a column of frost that spiraled upward like smoke from an invisible fire. The lattice of suspended meteorites reacted instantaneously, their alignment shifting, the light intensifying to create a network of luminous pathways that extended into the shaft above. The chamber had begun a process of transformation that was both natural and deliberate. It was as though the ice and meteorites were revealing the next layer of their story, a deeper level of understanding designed to be discovered only by those brave enough to follow. Dr. Graves exhaled slowly, her voice barely audible over the resonating hum. This is just the beginning," she said. "Whatever lies above or beyond, it's waiting for someone to reach it." Her eyes swept over the lattice, the suspended meteorites, and the central fragment. Every detail hinted at complexity beyond comprehension, a puzzle woven into the very fabric of the ice. And yet, the beauty of it, the perfect geometry, the symmetry, the interplay of light and vibration was undeniable, almost sacred in its precision. The wind stirred again within the chamber, carrying a metallic scent that seemed to vibrate in harmony with the luminous lattice. Shadows danced across the ice, flickering with the pulse of hidden energy. The hum had become a voice, patient and profound, echoing across the frozen expanse and leaving a sense of awe, reverence, and subtle unease in its wake. It was clear that the frozen frontier had a memory, a consciousness, and a purpose. And that purpose was now beginning to unfold. As the team gazed upward toward the unseen heights, the realization settled like frost on their bones. The chamber was not just a resting place for cosmic fragments. It was a conduit, a living archive, a bridge between Earth and the heavens. And somewhere beyond, hidden in the upper reaches of the shaft, lay the next revelation, the secret that had drawn the stones here, the message embedded in ice and meteorite alike, and the force that had waited centuries for its discovery. The team exchanged glances, their awe tempered by trepidation. Whatever awaited above, it would not merely be a sight to behold. It would be an experience, a confrontation with the unknown, a communion with something older, larger, and more mysterious than anything they had ever encountered. And as the glow of the lattice pulsated in synchronization with the central fragment, a chilling understanding took hold. The frozen frontier was alive, and it had chosen this moment to awaken. The chamber fell into tense silence once more. The hum persisted, a subtle vibration now, steady and expectant. The suspended meteorites remained poised, their alignment perfect, their luminous lattice a testament to an intelligence beyond comprehension. And for the first time, the team realized the magnitude of what lay before them. They were no longer observers of history. They were participants in a living, breathing cosmic narrative, one written in ice, stone, and the silent language of the universe. The frozen frontier awaited their next move. The journey upward had begun, and nothing would ever be the same. The ascent from the luminous chamber was slower than anyone expected. The ice funnel, once a simple conduit, now revealed itself as a labyrinth of frozen stairways and twisting tunnels, each step echoing with a resonance that seemed almost sentient. The air was sharper here, laden with frost so dense it clung to their clothing and froze their breath into ephemeral clouds that lingered longer than nature intended. The deeper the team climbed, the more the hum of the chamber below followed them, a persistent heartbeat that resonated through every shard of ice, every suspended meteorite, and now, through the very bones of the explorers themselves. Dr. Graves led the way, her gloved hands tracing the walls of ice for grip, each finger sliding over frost-polished surfaces that shimmered in the soft, pulsating light. The glow from the lattice below diminished gradually, replaced by the faint bluish luminescence of the ice walls themselves. Every fissure caught the light in ways that revealed hidden textures, layers upon layers of frozen history pressed together with a precision that defied natural formation. It was as though the ice had grown in concert with the meteorites, coalescing over centuries to create a cathedral of frozen memory. Malik adjusted his helmet lamp, catching movement in the corner of his vision. Shadows flickered along the walls, not cast by their lights, but by some subtle internal shimmer within the ice itself. The shapes were fleeting, shifting, almost alive, and they left an uncanny sense of being watched. The team paused, hearts synchronized with the deep hum below, realizing the ice was not merely a vessel, but a sentient archivist, holding within it echoes of events, energies, and perhaps even intentions that span millennia. As they rounded a tight bend, the tunnel opened briefly into a small antechamber. Meteorite fragments, smaller than those below but no less intricate, lay embedded in the ice like keys in a frozen keyboard. Each piece seemed to emit a faint pulsing vibration, a subtle chorus that joined the omnipresent hum. Dr. Graves knelt beside one, her gloved hand hovering inches above its surface. The pulse intensified as if responding to her proximity, a subtle conversation conducted through energy and resonance. She felt a shiver travel up her spine, an acknowledgement of her presence. It was not an ordinary rock. It was a participant, a messenger, a voice from beyond the sky, waiting patiently in the frozen silence. The tunnel narrowed again, forcing them into a single-file climb up a steep incline coated in slick, translucent ice. Every step required careful placement, every handhold tested against the natural strength of centuries compressed ice. The ascent became physically demanding, but the mental weight was heavier. Each shift in light, each subtle tremor beneath their boots, hinted at forces far larger than themselves, orchestrating a narrative they could only begin to perceive. It was all mixed with terror, curiosity laced with caution. They were intruders in a cathedral older than civilizations, yet chosen to witness its secrets. Above them, faint light began to bleed through cracks in the ice ceiling. Unlike the glow from the meteorites, this was warmer, almost golden, a stark contrast to the cold, crystalline blue that had dominated the cavern below. The team paused, momentarily blinded by the sudden shift, and then pressed forward, drawn toward the emerging warmth. It was as though the ice had been a veil, a protective shell, and they were now approaching the heart, the source of the frozen frontier's consciousness. Dr. Graves's gaze shifted to the walls, noting minute details she had not seen before. Tiny fractures and channels within the ice appeared to form symbols, not random, but deliberate, etched with care and purpose. Some resembled star maps, constellations drawn with precision. Others hinted at sequences, spirals, and patterns that suggested mathematical understanding beyond human history. The realization was both humbling and terrifying. The ice itself was a record, a cosmic ledger, preserving not just fragments of celestial debris, but knowledge, perhaps intelligence, waiting for the right observer to interpret. Malik broke the silence. "Do you think they're trying to communicate?" His voice was barely a whisper, but it carried the weight of his awe. Dr. Graves did not answer immediately. She placed her hand against a smooth panel of ice, feeling the faint vibration coursing through her palm. The pulse was rhythmic, deliberate, and her intuition screamed that it was a form of language, a dialogue conducted in energy, not words. She nodded slowly. "Yes, but it's not meant for casual observation. This is a message crafted over centuries, if not millennia, and it's responding to us in ways we are only beginning to understand." As they continued, the tunnel widened into a spiraling chamber. Here, the ice seemed to stretch infinitely upward, and the floor was a mosaic of frozen fragments arranged in patterns too precise for natural formation. Light from the surface filtered through, creating a celestial glow that refracted through every shard, illuminating the intricate networks of suspended meteorites above. The latticework of light and stone was a living map, pulsating with energy and resonance, beckoning them higher. It was mesmerizing, almost hypnotic, drawing them forward with a compulsion they could not resist. The hum shifted subtly, forming chords that harmonized with the vibrations of the meteorites embedded in the walls and floor. Dr. Graves paused, closing her eyes to listen. The rhythm was deliberate, almost musical, carrying a cadence that suggested logic and intent. It was more than sound. It was structure, communication, and guidance simultaneously. The chamber itself had a consciousness, orchestrating a symphony of ice, stone, and light. Every movement, every pulse, every reflection was a note in a narrative too vast for immediate comprehension. A sudden tremor ran through the ice beneath their feet. The team froze, hearts pounding, aware that the cavern was alive, aware of their intrusion, aware of their movement. Tiny shards of ice rained from above, glittering like falling stars, and the lattice of meteorites responded instantly, shifting slightly to accommodate the change. The synchronization was precise, elegant, deliberate. The frozen frontier was reactive, attentive, a sentient archivist adjusting its narrative in real time. Dr. Graves looked upward, toward the faint golden light now spilling through the ice. It was no longer a distant hint but a guiding beacon, drawing them toward the central chamber above. Every pulse of light, every vibration in the lattice below, urged them forward, reinforcing the path as though the ice itself were leading them to the climax of the hidden frontier. They were ascending not merely through a physical space, but through layers of time, knowledge, and energy, climbing toward revelation. And in that moment, amid the resonance of ice and meteorite, Dr. Graves understood a profound truth. The frozen frontier was not inert. It was alive. It was aware. And it had chosen this moment, this team, to reveal its secrets. The journey upward was not just an ascent. It was a communion with something ancient, immense, and beyond comprehension. And at the pinnacle of this cathedral of ice, a revelation awaited that could redefine their understanding of the universe itself. The apex of the spiral chamber opened into a vast cathedral-like expanse, its walls stretching upward beyond the reach of light. The golden glow that had guided them now fell in scattered beams, illuminating a frozen floor littered with meteorite fragments that shimmered like stars trapped in ice. The air was thinner here, biting, each breath crystallizing into ephemeral clouds that hung suspended for longer than natural laws should allow. Every sound, the crunch of boots, the rasp of breath, the faint hum of the chamber echoed through the colossal space, weaving a symphony of presence and anticipation. Dr. Graves paused, her gaze sweeping across the expanse. The sheer scale of the chamber was breathtaking. Frozen spires jutted from the floor like the fingers of ancient giants, their surfaces etched with spirals, arcs, and fractal patterns that glimmered faintly in the diffused light. Each meteorite fragment embedded within them pulsed gently, almost in unison, creating a subtle rhythm that resonated with the hum still echoing from below. It was as though the chamber itself was alive, and every element within it, ice, rock, and cosmic debris, was part of a vast conscious design. Malik stepped carefully among the shards, running a gloved hand over a fragment that glowed with a soft, ethereal light. The vibration beneath his touch was unlike anything he had felt before, deep, resonant, almost sentient. "Do you think they were delivered here intentionally?" he whispered, eyes wide, tracing the delicate networks of light that connected one fragment to another. Dr. Graves didn't answer immediately. She felt the pulse through her fingers, through the ice beneath her boots, and through the air itself. Intentionality radiated from the chamber. This was not a natural formation. These meteorites, these crystalline conduits, had been arranged, preserved, and aligned with purpose. A distant shimmer caught her attention. Beyond the scattered meteorites lay a colossal structure of ice that resembled a staircase, spiraling upward toward a dome that reflected the faint light of the apex above. Each step was embedded with fragments, their grooves forming intricate patterns that seemed to pulse with life. Dr. Graves felt a shiver run down her spine. The path was not just a passage, it was a narrative, a guide, a map encoded in frozen stone. Every movement along this ascent would bring them closer to understanding, closer to the revelation that awaited beyond sight. They began to climb, each step deliberate, mindful of the fragile harmony of ice and stone beneath them. The golden light above seemed to reach for them, brushing their shoulders, highlighting the suspended meteorites in prismatic brilliance. The hum from the lower chambers followed them, layering with a higher, more delicate resonance that suggested complexity beyond comprehension. Dr. Graves realized that the ascent was a journey not just in space, but through layers of energy and memory preserved by the frozen frontier. As they reached the midpoint of the staircase, a sudden tremor shook the chamber. Tiny shards of ice cascaded from the ceiling like glittering rain, catching the light in a fleeting celestial display. The lattice of suspended meteorites responded instantly, their alignment adjusting in perfect synchrony. Dr. Graves and Malik froze, hearts pounding. The hum shifted, forming chords that resonated with a clarity and precision that suggested intelligence. The chamber was aware, observing, communicating. It was no longer passive. It was interactive, alive in every sense. Dr. Graves placed her palm on the icy balustrade of the staircase. A vibration surged upward through her hand, a complex cadence that seemed to encode centuries of information. She closed her eyes, letting the pulse resonate through her body, translating energy into intuition. The frozen frontier was teaching them its language, revealing fragments of knowledge through resonance, light, and pattern. Every pulse, every glow, every alignment was intentional, a conscious orchestration of perception and understanding. Malik's voice broke the reverie. "Do you feel that? It's like It knows we're here." He hesitated, unsure if the chamber would respond to his words. Dr. Graves nodded. "Yes," she said softly, "it's aware. And it's waiting for us to reach the top, to witness its story fully." She gestured toward the apex of the staircase, where the dome shimmered with a faint, almost imperceptible radiance. The structure seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting subtly, as if alive, anticipating their arrival. With renewed focus, they continued the climb. Each step was a negotiation with the ice, with the embedded meteorites, and with the latent energy that pulsed through the chamber. The resonance beneath their boots became a language in itself, subtle vibrations translating into patterns of understanding. Dr. Graves felt a profound connection forming, not just with the chamber, but with the cosmic history embedded within the meteorites. Each fragment was a story, each pulse a word, and together they formed a narrative older than memory, waiting to be interpreted. As they neared the summit, the chamber opened into a final expanse beneath the crystalline dome. The suspended meteorites aligned in concentric circles around a central fragment, larger than any they had encountered, hovering above the ice as though suspended by invisible hands. It pulsed with intensity, the resonance now palpable, a heartbeat so strong it reverberated through every nerve in their bodies. The golden light from above bathed the entire scene, creating an almost ethereal glow that reflected across the ice and rock. Dr. Graves stepped forward cautiously, drawn to the central fragment. It seemed to respond to her presence, pulsing faster, a rhythm that echoed her own heartbeat. The lattice of meteorites surrounding it shimmered in synchrony, casting complex shadows and patterns across the chamber floor. It was not merely a stone, it was a message, a key, a living memory of the cosmos itself. Every fragment, every pulse, every glow coalesced here, at the heart of the frozen frontier, awaiting recognition, comprehension, and interaction. Malik approached her side, equally awed and apprehensive. "What is it trying to show us?" he asked, voice trembling. Dr. Graves didn't answer immediately. She placed her hands gently around the central fragment, feeling the pulse, the energy, and the vibration. The resonance expanded outward, connecting with every meteorite, every crystalline structure, and every shard of ice in the chamber. The frozen frontier was alive, and now it was revealing its essence. The hum intensified, evolving into a melodic cadence, the notes rising and falling like waves of knowledge and energy. Light rippled across the ice floor, creating a projection of stars, galaxies, and celestial patterns, each sequence more intricate than the last. It was history, physics, and memory encoded in frozen resonance, a cosmic narrative playing out in real time. Dr. Graves and Malik watched in silent awe, understanding dawning slowly. The frozen frontier was not just a resting place for meteorites. It was a living archive, a cosmic library, and they were standing at its threshold. The revelation awaited, and beyond the dome, higher still, the ultimate secret of the frozen frontier waited to be unveiled. The central fragment's pulse intensified, radiating energy that seemed to vibrate through the entire chamber. The lattice of suspended meteorites reacted instantly, their alignment shifting to form intricate spirals and geometric arcs, a choreography dictated by forces beyond human comprehension. The light from the crystalline dome above bathed the space in a golden haze, illuminating details that had been imperceptible before. Microfractures within the ice that glowed faintly, frozen channels etched like veins, and tiny fragments suspended midair, orbiting in visible paths. Every element of the chamber moved in subtle synchrony, a living testament to a cosmic consciousness that had orchestrated its existence over centuries. Dr. Graves stepped closer to the central fragment, her breath shallow, each inhalation crystallizing into transient clouds that seemed to linger in reverence. She extended a gloved hand toward it, the moment charged with an almost palpable anticipation. The pulse beneath her fingertips was no longer just vibration. It was information, a stream of encoded memory, of forces, events, and histories written in resonance, waiting for translation. Her mind strained to comprehend the scale, the age, the magnitude of the communication. It was as though the universe itself were speaking through ice and stone, a language of energy and geometry that bypassed words entirely. Malik's eyes reflected the golden light as he moved to stand beside her, mirroring her awe. It's alive, he whispered. Like it knows who we are. Dr. Graves nodded slowly. Yes, but it's more than that. It's aware of everything that has touched it. The meteors, the ice, even us. And now, it's choosing to share. She could feel the pulse intensify, syncopating with her own heartbeat. It was not just communication. It was communion, a connection between human consciousness and a cosmic archive preserved in frozen resonance. The lattice of meteorites around the chamber began to shift more dramatically. Spirals expanded, arcs rotated, and fragments hovered higher, forming concentric rings that framed the central fragment like a halo. The light refracted in dazzling patterns, casting